there, fictional friends, and welcome to another episode of Fully Booked. I'm Megan.
And I'm Shireen.
And it is the first week of June.
June-tember.
There you go. You did do that with me also, and it kind of works better. I don't know. The syllables are needed.
They really are.
Yeah.
And really, June-tember is all I can think of right now.
It's fine. It doesn't matter. We're tired.
We are tired. It's been a week, people.
It sure has. Anyway, so for the month of June, we're going to be talking about high fantasy.
Woo, I'm so excited.
You know what? We're heading into summer and everything, and I think we just wanted something maybe like a little bit more whimsical, a little bit more fantastical.
Oh, yeah. I think, Shakespeare was already on this, right? Midsummer Night's Dream.
Yeah.
Midsummer is what, June?
Is June or July?
I think it's June.
Is it?
Yeah.
Why is it so early?
I don't know. I was surprised at this when I read about it at some point, but since then
probably something to do with global warming and the seasons are different than they used to be.
Probably. But since then it's stuck with me that Shakespeare, Midsummer Night's Dream.
Sure.
June.
And June. Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Why not? So we're going to be talking about, all things high fantasy for the month of June. I think we can all agree that high fantasy has had a resurgence in the past, like 4 or 5 years or so, I would say. And obviously the uptick in popularity of Bookstagram and Book Talk and everything has really added to that a lot too. And I think a lot of people have realized that they have a love for this type of fantasy. So we're going to be kind of getting into all of that this month and talking about all the different aspects of it. Some older, some newer, and everything that we do and don't enjoy about all of them, basically.
I don't think that there's much that I don't enjoy about this. But
I'm sure that we can throw it in there anyway. But anyway, we're kicking it off with, a classic, really.
It is.
Yeah, because this week we're talking about the 2005 adaptation of the first movie in the Chronicles of Narnia series, which is obviously The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
There is a prophecy that 2 sons of Adam and 2 daughters of Eve will appear to defeat the White Witch and put an end to this 100-year winter.
I think you've made a mistake. We're not heroes.
There's no mistake. Aslan is on the...
And this was the second adaptation of this movie.
Yeah, I remember there's an animated one that I used to watch when I was a kid.
There was, yeah.
I don't remember if there was another live action, though.
I don't think there was a live action, but there was an animated one.
Yeah.
And obviously based on, C.S. Lewis.
Yes, yeah. So, so the Chronicles of Narnia, for people who aren't super familiar with the series, there's 7 books, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so, yeah.
Written by C.S. Lewis. This technically, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, chronologically is the second novel, if I'm not mistaken, or third.
The first one is The Magician's Nephew.
Thank you. Okay, chronologically, it's the second novel, but as far as publication history, this was actually the first novel published in the series back in 1950. So confusing, but once you kind of figure that part out, you're like, oh, okay, I get it. This is the first novel that was published. This is the first of, I believe it's three books throughout the course of the 7 novels that follow the Pevensie children.
That's right, and they made 3 movies.
And they've made 3 movies that are the books, if I'm not mistaken, that do follow those kids in the first place. So
those are the other 2 are Prince Caspian and The Voyage of the
Don Treader, I believe.
Treader?
I think it's Treader. Yeah, exactly. They've made all 3 of those movies, which I had forgotten about. Not Prince Caspian, but I've never seen Voyage of the Don Treader.
Maybe we'll watch it.
Maybe we'll watch it. Okay, it's fine. Anyway, so this film came out in 2005, and at the time of recording this, it has a 6.9 out of 10 on IMDb and 61% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Tomatoes.
Because those tomatoes, it's not rigged or anything. People aren't writing fake reviews or anything on Rotten Tomatoes. Of course, everything's so above board over there. Fucking stupid. Anyway, the Chronicles of Narnia as a whole all take place at various different times in the magical fantasy land of Narnia, which people throughout the course of the series can access in all kinds of different ways, accidentally stumbling from the real world into Narnia, basically. And it does follow different characters in certain of the books, but The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, I think because it was the first one published, but also just because of the type of story that it is definitely the most popular of all of them. It's the most well-known. It's absolutely massive. It's just one of those children's children's classics that I think most people have read to their kids, read with their kids, or read themselves as a child.
Yeah.
Because it's just, I don't know, it's just one of those books. It's so
very warm and cozy.
It is. Yeah. There's something really cozy about it. So it's like high fantasy, but also cozy fantasy, and also children's lit.
It's very reminiscent of kind of like the Lord of the Rings style story,
like the Hobbit, but even more for children, I guess.
But that's what I was going to say. It's like very much for children, and it's kind of the ultimate escapism of a story, right? Like if you were going to get your kid to enjoy reading, this would be one way of doing it, because it's a story within a story.
Yes.
Right?
And there's something I think that people, love so much as a child. I think it's just like such a crazy, like everyone would love to accidentally stumble in. Every child would like to accidentally stumble into a fantasy land 100%. Of some kind. Like every kid would like to accidentally wind up in Narnia.
Of course.
There are talking animals. Yeah. There are magical powers that you can inherit, and all kinds of things that are going on.
There are some dangers, but for the most part, they do a good job of never actually making you feel like scared and like worried that anything actually bad is going to happen.
Yeah, like there are stakes, but they're not stakes in the way where you're like, oh my God, these kids are going to fucking die.
No, they're not, because like even I was watching it last night, and I guess we'll start getting into this, but I was watching it and I'm like, like Lucy, the youngest girl.
Yes.
I'm like, she at no point looks like she's terrified about this like shirtless faun who's like saying he's gonna kidnap her.
No, only for about half a second.
Like she's more just like, you said you were my friend. It's like, girl, like I would be freaking out.
You'd be like, get away from me, stranger danger.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe takes place. So the story begins in London, and it would have been 1940 through 1941 because the Blitz was happening in London. So the Germans were bombing London and its suburbs at that time. So I think that this is set sometime in 1940 anyway, when that was taking place.
And it's when they sent the children away from the big cities to safety, basically.
Yeah, this was like a real thing that was happening. Yeah. Obviously, people wanted to get their kids away from danger, so a lot of kids were shipped off to the countryside because the enemy forces weren't bombing those areas. Why would they have been?
Well, yeah, not as much as they were in London. Yeah.
No, not as much as like the major hubs, obviously. Yeah. So people were sending their kids off. So the Pevensie kids, there are 4 of them. The oldest is Peter, followed by Susan, and then Edmund, and Lucy is the baby.
Yeah.
They're all like what? Sort of like 6 or 7 through like 14-ish. How old is Peter supposed to be? 14, 15, probably. I would assume as much anyway. Something along those lines. I don't know. I don't know that it doesn't matter. To be fair, I don't think it matters. I think they just look older than
I need to know.
Oh, God. I'm just going to Google all of them now. Can you tell me how old all of them are?
Oh, here. Main characters. Lucy is the youngest. It does not say.
It doesn't say.
It doesn't say.
No, I don't think it matters. It's fine. It's okay. I would assume if Peter's over 15, I would be shocked.
Yeah, you're right.
Just in terms of, not the actor, I'm not trying to think of the kid. I'm
trying the actual characters.
Like the characters, their reactions to things, the way that they interact with the world around them when they like come into Narnia and stuff. Yeah. If he's over 15, I would be shocked. So, I don't know. And I assume that Lucy's supposed to be like 7 or 8.
Oh, wait, I have it. Lucy is 8, Edmund is 10, Susan is 12, and Peter is 13.
Okay.
That's at the start
of the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, at the beginning of the story, they're sent away, obviously by their mom, to go and live with I can't figure out the relationship that they have with the professor.
I believe that it was like they had safe houses in the countryside, and so children were just kind of randomly assigned.
Okay. So Professor Kirke is played by Jim Broadbent in the movie. So they're sent away to live with him. And again, that's it. This was the first novel published, but technically in the chronology, it's not first. And the first novel in the series, The Magician's Nephew, follows Professor Kirke as a child, like 50 years prior. He goes to Narnia. So he knows that it exists. So that becomes like a little bit of a plot point, which they don't touch on it that much in the movie, but it's a thing.
No.
So the kids go to his big house that he has in the countryside and are trying to kind of make their own fun, because they're all like, like they really fall into like these almost like archetypes of like sibling type characters. Like Peter is the oldest. He tries to be the responsible one. He's the brave one, like all that kind of stuff. Susan is the level-headed skeptic of the group, I would say. She tries the smart one. And she's also very like, no, this can't be possible. No, this can't be true. Come on, guys, you're being ridiculous. Edmund is the whiny little shit of the group.
Yeah, he's like got like middle child syndrome.
He really does. He does. He's, I think he's very upset that he's not the oldest boy. It really seems to bother him. It's like anybody watches like Succession, it's like a Kendall level kind of like world that he lives in anyway. He's like a mix of Kendall and Roman in a way that you're like, gross. Anyway. And then Lucy is the youngest. Lucy is obviously your wide-eyed, innocent one. She's the one who's also like, you know, very accepting of everyone that she comes into contact with, because let's face it, young kids don't have any prejudice unless they're taught prejudice in the first place. So for them, it's just, you know, like, oh, I'm happy to make friends with people and to go do this. And of course, she'll be the most likely to accept the circumstances of there being a fantasy world that you can access through a closet.
Because she's the youngest, and she hasn't, because I think she's been like sheltered by her older siblings as well to an extent. She's been able to kind of block out the realities of the war to an extent.
Yeah. So when they're in this country house, they decide to play hide and seek because Lucy's bored. And they're like, okay. And Peter's like, okay, fine. So they all run off to hide. She runs into a room that contains literally nothing but a very large wardrobe at the end of the room that she's like, okay, well, I'm going to go hide in there while he's counting. And she starts climbing into this big wardrobe, walks all the way through, and slowly but surely it becomes fewer coats and trees pop up for some reason. And you can tell she's looking back and forth like, what the fuck is going on? And then she finally...
I would probably scream and run away if I were her.
I know. I wouldn't have screamed, but I might not have gone all the way through the cupboard now that I'm thinking about it. I'm like, oh, I don't know about that. Yeah. And anyway, eventually stumbles out into what looks like outdoors and is...
in the winter.
And it's the winter. Everything's covered in snow. And the story is definitely like spring or summer when they go to the countryside in the first place. It is not winter. Like so she's a little bit confused at first, and then very quickly comes into contact with the first sort of magical creature that we're introduced to, a faun named Mr. Tumnus.
Played by James McAvoy.
Oh my God.
Baby James McAvoy.
You know what? It's been a really long time since I've seen this movie, but I've seen it a few times in life in general, and every single time I watch it, I forget.
Yes.
Immediately after, I forget that James McAvoy played Mr. Tumnus, and I'm like, oh shit, this was like the first movie I saw this guy in.
100%, you know, and he really gives it his all.
He does. No, he does a really good job with this character. He's like because he's so mild-mannered and stuff, and we're not really used to seeing him as a character like that now, I wouldn't say as much, so it's interesting to see. Also, it must have been really funny. I want to see like behind-the-scenes stuff of him in costume with his actual Scottish accent, because I feel like it would be really great.
Yeah, he's very charmingly befuddled all throughout this movie.
Oh my God, yeah.
So, yeah,
it's really cute. It's really cute. So, so she, you know, and he's the one who, he gives you your exposition dump and explains that they're in Narnia, and she's like, what? Yeah. But again, she's 8. She's 8. She's like, okay,
that sounds good. Yeah. And like, I think that, you know, as I was watching it, I'm like, there's like very much throughout with all the characters, a level of like continued disbelief that this is actually happening, so they're kind of more open to just going along. I think
until
things.
Like a certain, like once they cross a certain threshold, I think it becomes much more real for them. But there's definitely, they all spend like the first like little while that they're there being like, nah, this is definitely not actually happening.
So I'm just gonna go with anything here.
I feel like I would probably have had that same reaction, been like, oh, I'm sure I'm having like a dream right now or something, because this is weird. So she goes back to Mr. Tumnus's little house for tea, and he tells her that, you know, she can come and stay there and it's warm and blah, 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 whatever. While she's there, he puts on a show with a flute. It's weird.
It is weird.
And it kind of hypnotizes her in a way, but she falls asleep.
Yeah.
And she wakes up a number of hours later and sees that it's dark out, and she's like, oh my God, I got to get back. My siblings are going to be really worried about me. So she goes to leave, and he kind of unfortunately explains that due to circumstances of this whole world that they live in Narnia, something that he says earlier is because she's like, oh, that's nice because it's like Christmas. And he's like, no, that's not the way it works here. It's always winter, but it's never Christmas. Which is such a good, smart aspect of evil for a children's story, because like what would be worse for a child than for there to never be Christmas?
And even Lucy says it. She's like, no presents. Yes. Like that's her first reaction.
Of course.
And it would be the most evil thing to do would be to make it always winter, never Christmas.
Never Christmas. That's it. They never get to celebrate Christmas. So he explains all of this exposition stuff in general, and that Narnia is run by a woman called the White Witch, who had taken over the kingdom, and she's the one who makes it so that it's always winter all the time, and it's never summer, never another season. It's always winter. It's always cold and miserable. And that he realized when she showed up initially, she explained herself, and he realized that she was human. And he was told, they've all been told, the entire kingdom, by the Queen's forces, that should humans ever show up in any way, shape, or form, they're to be reported to the Queen, and that she will come and take them.
Because there's some sort of prophecy.
There's a prophecy that we're unclear about right now, but it's very cleared up a little bit later. So he initially was going to do that, but he felt he really likes Lucy, and he had a change of heart and decides that he needs to get her out of there, so he gets her back to the wardrobe. She makes her way back through. And we realize, even though in Narnia it's been hours and hours,
no time.
It's been seconds. It's been seconds at home, because she pops out and she's just like, "I'm back. Don't worry about me." And they're all like, "What the hell are you talking about?"
No, you're supposed to hide.
And Susan's like, "Hello, you're supposed to hide. We're playing hide and seek." And she tries to explain all of this to them, but, you know, like,
they don't believe her.
Susan's like, "Okay, that's ridiculous." And Edmund's like, "You're so stupid," basically.
Yeah. But they also, like, the older siblings are like, you know, she's a kid, like, let
and
her
they're
have
fine
it.
with it. And Edmund's just like, "She just wants attention." And you're like, God,
he's
what
such a little shit.
He's such a little shit. Yeah. Honestly, I know.
They chose the best actor.
He does oh, God, he's so good at it.
So good at it. He's got such a, like, oh, you want to slap him.
Yeah, what is it, Skander Keynes? Good job, man.
Yeah.
Seriously, I say that because he's, like, our age, basically.
Yeah.
So... Anyway, so, but she's very disappointed that everybody isn't taking her seriously at all. She decides that, like, what is it, like, that either that night or something, that she's going to go back through the wardrobe. So she does that. Like, she, you know, climbs on back through, and she doesn't realize it, but Edmund's followed her through the wardrobe this time, because, again, he thought she was being stupid, but then he follows her through, and he's like, "Whoa, what the hell's going on?" So he is trying to figure out where he is. She's wandered off to go find Mr. Tumnus. And he's almost bowled over by a sled that comes by, that stops, and is then accosted and attacked by the, I don't know, second in command. What is he, her lackey?
I think he's just her lackey.
Yeah, kind of, whatever.
But it's the queen in the sled.
Yes, exactly. That's it. Played by Tilda Swinton. Probably one of the first times I'd ever seen her as well.
She did a good job in that.
And very much like the first, I would say, like the first in a long line of Tilda Swinton playing a character that looks like, exotic feels like a weird word, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because she's so striking in a way that you never really see anyone else at all. And so she
has a very distinct look.
She does. So she really suits characters like this. Yeah. And she's such a good actress that she really pulls off like a lot of stuff that way.
She's very believable in this role.
Very much.
Yeah.
Because she really does a great job of treading the line with Edmund in being like trying to hold herself back from being the way that she actually is, which is cruel and horrible, but putting on a front of like, I'm very motherly. Yeah. And no, I just want to take care of you. And do you want something hot to drink? And do you want this? And do you want that kind of thing? But she's like, it's all bullshit, basically.
Yeah. And side note, Turkish delight has never been anything that interested me.
It's disgusting.
It's pretty gross. But in this movie, God, do they make it look good.
They make it look, it's true, they make it look really different than it does. And maybe I'd have to have it freshly.
It is like that, like the real stuff from Turkey. Like,
oh, really?
It's like this real, like, differently colored whatever.
I think it's only because I've only ever had like Turkish delight here.
What, like with the chocolate covering?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, that's not real Turkish delight. But the way that they make it look in this movie is like so nice. Yeah. You know?
It does look really.
Silver box and stuff.
Yeah, that's it. It does look really good. So, you know, of course, and again, because if Edmund's supposed to be like 10, you know, he's completely won over by basically hot cocoa and candy. Yeah. so
shows the depth of his character.
Yeah. So, you know, the witch tells him like, oh, well, why don't you go and you get your brother and your sisters, and you come back here and bring them to me. You can find my castle over there. You do that. Okay, thanks, bye. And she sends him on his merry way. So he goes back through, and he also, like, because he's 10 and he's stupid, and he just like tells her about like Mr. Tumnus, and that he's the one that like Lucy's been spending time with and stuff like that. They go back, and Lucy goes to tell the siblings again, yeah, oh, no, I went back, I saw Mr. Tumnus again, blah, blah, blah. And Peter and Susan are like, okay.
Yeah, and she's like, but Edmund was there.
But Edmund was there. Yeah, look, I saw Edmund. Edmund was there. And he's just like, no, I wasn't. You're like, I don't know. I was just trying to make her, I was just trying to make her feel better. So I'm sorry. I shouldn't have let her lie about that. And she gets really upset. And I don't know how you could let that poor little girl get upset. She looks so sad.
I know, she's so cute.
She's so cute. I was like, oh my God, that makes me feel so bad. Yeah. So I'm assuming a day or two later, again, it's been like a short period of time, they're playing a game and they accidentally break a window with the ball. Whoops. And then they're running away from the housekeeper, who's kind of a bitch. And Lucy's like, oh, we can go to Narnia. We can go back through the wardrobe. And Edmund's like, yeah, no, I was sorry. I lied before. She was totally telling the truth. It totally exists. Let's go.
Such a dick.
Yeah, he's a pain in the ass. So they go through, and Peter and Susan are like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Being the older ones, they're like, whoa, wait a minute. What the hell is going on? And Peter's the one who, again, Peter and Edmund have a very tenuous relationship. And so Peter is like, why would you lie? Why would you make her feel bad like that? Like, why would you do that in the first place? What the hell is wrong with you? And then they're approached by Mr. Beaver. Mr. and Mrs. Beaver are my favorites. They're so stinking cute.
Funny.
They're so cute.
They're so funny.
Mr. Beaver shows up. It's a beaver that talks, guys, and he's just called Mr. Beaver.
All the animals talk in this, yeah.
So Mr. Beaver shows up, and again, more exposition dumping to let them know that Tumnus was taken by the witch.
Yeah.
And is
harboring a fugitive
and is, being held at her castle of horribleness, basically.
Direct quote.
Yeah. And of course, and again, like, this is, you get a lot of the different characters where, like, Peter, for all of his sort of initial, like, what the heck is going on, once he kind of understands the story, he really, like, quickly is like, okay, let's go do this. We should help people. We should do this. Yeah. And Susan's still the one who's like, this is ridiculous.
We just came through a wardrobe, people. This is not our fight.
And she's just like, and he's there and he's like, well, I don't know. The beaver's talking about this. And she's like, he's a beaver. He shouldn't be saying anything at all. And I love that the beaver's just like, what are you doing? Yeah. Like, he pops back over the thing. He's like, everything okay? Yeah. And they're all like, yeah, it's fine. We're just talking.
The beavers are great.
Mr. and Mrs. Beaver are great. They've got great banter.
Yeah, they do.
They're like a couple that's been married for 50 years kind of banter. It's really good.
I just love that moment where Peter's like leaning over to the beaver and like handing out his hand like you would to a dog. You know? He's like, well, I'm not going to smell it.
Like, well, I'm not going to smell it. And they're both like, and he's like, oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
So when they make it back to the beaver's like hut or dam, it's not really a dam because it's not in the water,
it's like
but
under a tree.
It's like a hut that they've built. Anyway, whatever, it's their house. Mr. and Mrs. Beaver explained to them that yes, the witch is in charge, but Aslan is on the moon and on the move, and they're like, who the fuck is Aslan?
Big lion.
I don't know who that is. Yeah. But he's the one who should be like kind of like the true sort of king to an extent and stuff like that. He's going to help free. And he's like, meant to help free Narnia from the witch's reign, basically. Because I guess she's been in control for like a good
100 years.
100 years? Is that it? Yeah, okay. And there's a prophecy. This is where we get the prophecy dump. So the prophecy is basically that they call them 2 sons of Adam and 2 daughters of Eve. So 2 male and 2 female characters, humans, will be the ones to defeat the witch and to restore Narnia to the way that it's supposed to be. So that's what their whole thing is. Also keep in mind that, in spite of the fact that, he kind of said that he didn't necessarily mean for it to come out this way, C.S. Lewis was also a theologian. So he did write a lot about religion and Christianity and things like that. And he was like a practicing Christian. And so there is a lot of like small sorts of bits of like religious connotations within the story as well. So like, sons of Adam and daughters of Eve, the way that they're referred to is like very biblical. A lot to do with Aslan later, and there's a sacrifice that occurs is very Jesus-like kind of thing. So there is a lot of that. So when you start kind of looking into it, you realize kind of how much exists in like the subtext of it. And weird.
That's been like a very kind of divisive, I guess, piece about C.S. Lewis's writing. A lot of people don't like him because of this. I don't know. Like, I think that, he did write some good books and they're very interesting stories. And like, I don't think that they're trying to subliminally brainwash people into becoming Christians.
I don't really think it's meant to be that way particularly. I think people might exaggerate with that. But at the same time, look, I understand it. Obviously, like, Christianity has a long history of a lot of negative stuff. So I can understand that people would not necessarily be super pumped about that. I get it. But if you just look at it from like a fantasy story perspective, it's a good one.
It's a good one.
So, right. So they explain all of this. While this is happening, Edmund sneaks out to go to the witch's palace and tell her that he's there, basically.
And he just wants more candy.
He just wants more.
So, like,
he's 10. He's 10 years old.
I get it, but it's just so funny because, like, you look at the difference between Edmund and Lucy, for example. Lucy, who's 8,
wants to help.
She wants to help. Yeah. She wants to help her friend. She wants to save him and stuff. And Edmund's just like, yo, I want my candy, bitch.
Yeah, basically. I know. Yeah, that sounds about right. He's like, oh, I wanted to see you. I wanted more Turkish delight. Yeah. Anyway, so he goes off, but of course she's fucking pissed because he didn't bring his siblings with him. Like, he was trying to convince them to go, but they were all like, no, she sounds horrible. Mm-hmm. She basically just locks him up because, yes, she's obviously horrible. She's evil. That's the whole thing. That's the whole point. So she locks him up. He meets Mr. Tumnus, who, is also like, oh God, you're here. Is Lucy here? Is she okay? And he's like, I don't know. Because again, in his, 10-year-old absurdity, I only want to protect myself. He tells the witch where the kids are.
And he tells her all about Aslan.
That they were talking about Aslan and all this kind of stuff. And you're like, wow, great. Good job, Edmund. Well done.
You piece of shit.
Well done, you little idiot. And of course, after this point, obviously, she still doesn't let him go or do anything nice, and they turn Mr. Tumnus to stone, because that's what she's done with a whole bunch of the people who have gone against her. All these characters, all these different creatures. There are a lot of stone statues in the palace, and that's why they used to be alive and functional.
Terrible.
Yeah. So they wind up having to, the other kids and the beavers wind up having to leave the hut because her soldiers show up. They're wolves.
Yeah.
The wolves are on her side, I guess.
Yeah, I always wonder about this.
She has specific types of animals, and Aslan has specific types of animals, which is interesting.
They all live in Narnia.
Yes, yeah.
So I'm very confused because it's we're going to restore Narnia to what it should have been. And it's what about the minotaurs and the wolves and all the scary things?
I don't know. Yeah, do they get to, are they pardoned? How does that work? I have no idea.
Are they not part of Narnia?
Maybe some of them, I don't know, a bunch of them die later. So.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. So they all take off. Obviously, they have to take off because they're being pursued. There's a whole big bunch of chase. There's a waterfall. There's all kinds of shit going on. It's a lot to get through. It's a long movie. It's 2.5 hours.
Oh, yeah.
So once they're able to get away from the wolves, at that point, they wind up a little bit further in the woods, and you start to see that there are changes that are occurring because some of the snow is starting to melt and some of the trees are starting to bloom ever so slightly. This is when, because her reign is starting to be broken, her spell over the land is starting to be broken, they meet Father Christmas, which is cute.
It's so cute.
Played by one of the head of the Night Watch from Game of Thrones. Don't know his name, but that's who that is.
That's who that is.
Yes, ma'am.
I was looking at him and I'm I know this man.
I'm watching this movie and my fiance's sitting there and he's just like, oh shit, hey, from Game of Thrones. So he plays Father Christmas, and Father Christmas is the one who gives them their gifts, which are the special things that each of them have. So it's basically tools that they need to defend themselves, pretty much.
Weapons and stuff.
Yeah, so Lucy receives a little vial, a knife, hello, and a little vial with a healing potion where you only need a drop at a time and it will heal any kind of ailment or injury, pretty much. And then, and a small dagger. Susan receives a magical horn that she can use, and if she blows in it anywhere that she is, help will come. That's the whole thing with it. And also a bow and arrow, because one of the female characters always has to have a bow and arrow, guys.
Yeah, I don't know what's with that.
I don't know. Apparently we don't like hand-to-hand combat, but we'll definitely shoot you from far away.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, I guess that's right. I would probably prefer the bow and arrow, too.
Yeah, totally.
And Peter obviously receives a sword and a shield.
Sword with a lion head on the
lion on it. Yeah, exactly. That's it. It's very Gryffindor code.
It is. It very much is. Yeah.
So after they get all of that stuff, they finally make their way through more of the forest to Aslan's camp, where we meet him for the first first time, he's Big Lion, voiced by Liam Neeson. It's great.
I know. I was listening to it and I'm like, man, that voice sounds familiar. And then I was like, oh, yeah, obviously
that's
it's Liam Neeson.
It's Liam Neeson. Great voice for a character like that. That makes total sense. So he... Oh, right. Okay, yes. So, Peter does manage to kill one of the wolves that's come after them and stuff, because there are, like, a few of the wolves that show up at the camp, basically, and, like, attack them.
Yeah, this keeps happening periodically.
Yes, and Aslan's troops, in turn, chase after them, follow them back to the...
This was totally unrealistic when they go and they infiltrate the camp of the enemies, and, like...
And steal Edmund.
Steal Edmund back, and there's, like, no repercussions. There's no, like,
No, there's just one Minotaur who's like, oh, they took him.
Yeah. And you're like, okay.
The one big Minotaur who's like her general or whatever he's supposed to be. Is like, oh, they took him. All I could think about was how that poor man who had to wear that suit.
Oh, I know,
because it's a whole suit. Because it's a whole partial animatronic, and it's a whole practical. That suit is completely practical, and I was looking at him and I was like, God, that must have been hot.
Oh, I can imagine.
That must not have been pleasant at all. So the White Witch shows up at the camp to speak to Aslan, because apparently a number of years prior, the agreement was that any traitors in the land, or any whatever people who like tried to usurp what was happening, were her property. Like, what? Someone explain that to me.
But I don't understand. It's like she clearly like came in, fucked shit up, dethroned everyone.
Yeah.
And then was like, oh, but let's like create some like ground rules where like you also have to obey me.
So
and it's like, what?
So what? And so because of that, she's like, well, Edmund's mine. And the kids are all like, I'm sorry, what? And Aslan's like, no. No. You can't have him. So they go off to have a super secret meeting about it. And then they come out, and of course, like, you kind of were just like, wow, that was easy, because Aslan's like, all right, it's fine. She's not taking him. It's okay. And everybody's like, yay. But I'm like, that felt too easy, didn't it? And lo and behold, it was too easy. Yep. Because literally that night, Lucy wakes up because she hears Aslan outside the tent that they're in. So she wakes Susan up, and the two girls walk with him, because they're like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And he's like, I have to, kind of do a thing sort of thing. And they're like, can we walk with you? And he was like, sure, that would be nice. So they follow him further through the woods to the other side, to the White Witch's camp, where he tells them, no matter what you see, no matter what happens, you cannot come out of these hiding spots. Like, do not
promise me.
He's like, do not. It doesn't matter what happens. And they're like, okay. I think you should have sent them away, because what happens is very violent and horrible.
Like, how did they not like jump out and like try and cause a ruckus here?
Oh my gosh. Anyway, so of course, what it turns out the situation is that in order to spare Edmund from being taken by the White Witch, Aslan tells her that he will go in his stead. He will sacrifice himself, basically. So all of her whatever people, the creatures, her followers or whatever, proceed to that's it, like to like torture him, kind of.
Oh, they shave him.
So he looks so sad. They shave him and they like tie him up and stuff, and it's just like a big cat, and it makes me so sad.
I know, yeah.
And then, she literally kills him. So you're like,
I know.
Wow.
Like, what the fuck? And you're like, wow, okay. So our only hope for winning just died?
Yeah, that's it. So on the sacrificial stone altar thing that they've got, she literally kills him. And you're like, oh my God, okay. And then, of course, she's like, haha, you're not saving anything, because I'm going to go kill those fucking kids anyway. So, of course, the next morning, she's like rallied the troops, and so has Peter. And he's also like, where the hell are my sisters? Where is Aslan? I guess I'm in charge now? That's crazy.
Yeah.
So he has to like rally the troops and get everyone sorted so that they can all go to war. Which is pretty much what happens. They all go to war. There's a big battle.
Yeah, it's a big battle. And at this point, my husband was like, wow, this is like a really lame version of The Lord of the Rings.
Yes. It's also for kids. So.
That's what I said.
Yeah, you're like, yes,
also
exactly.
Very much for children.
It's very much for kids, guys. Yeah. It's gonna be. That's what it's gonna be like. So
yeah, like no one really dies.
No. No. Well, unnamed creatures die, but like they weren't characters.
But they get revived at the end, don't they? Lucy revives them with her.
Most of them, yeah. I don't know about all of them. What about that centaur?
I think she revives him.
Does she?
Yeah, that's the whole thing when she like looks at her bottle of juice and she's
like, okay.
Ah.
No, I think you may be right. Anyway, so the battle begins with all of them. And, obviously that's it. Like, there are losses on both sides, et cetera, et cetera. Meanwhile,
et cetera.
Well, meanwhile, Susan and Lucy are still with Aslan. I love that it's the next morning. These two are just chilling, and the others are like fighting for their lives.
Like, there's a whole ass war.
There's a whole war. An entire battle is occurring, and they wake up, and of course they're about to leave, but then it's like something crazy happens. Like this, they try to walk away, but the stone table, the altar cracks.
Yeah,
and then when they turn around, Aslan is alive and well. He's totally fine,
and his mane is back intact.
I know, and he's so cute. I don't care if he's CG, he's adorable. And he basically is like, well, the witch isn't a good enough person basically to have understood and read the magic correctly, and she would have realized that a sacrifice would pretty much just like usurp everything about this and would right everything and bring it back stronger. So that's exactly what it did. So they take off because he's like, we're going to need more people. We're going to need more help. So they take off. They go to her palace, and he unfreezes all of these people who have been turned to stone.
He just blows on them.
It's crazy.
He's got like magical breath.
He does. Actually, Aslan has magical everything, apparently. It's crazy. Awesome. It's ridiculous. Anything that he wants to do, he's like, yeah, I can do that.
Yeah,
it's fine.
I can do it, no problem.
Yeah, so he, so of course he revives Mr. Tumnus, which is nice. So that's like their cute little like moment. And then of course they rally all of these additional troops and take off to go back to the battle where things aren't going super well for Peter and Edmund and everyone, because unfortunately the Queen had a much larger army. So she's,
she's riding in there coolly with her polar bears.
Oh, with her polar bears and her like headdress that she has on.
Well, her headdress was made out of Aslan's mane.
Yes.
Yeah.
What a bitch.
I know.
She's like, the fucking worst.
She's got like an outfit for every occasion. I don't know if you noticed this. Like, she's not only like the winter queen. Like, she's like, now I'm like the sacrifice queen.
Now I'm like the summer like battle queen. I know. I will say, like, she might be horrible, but she serves the entire fucking movie.
Great costumes.
It's so good. Yeah. Her costumes and her makeup look really good the whole time. Totally. So of course this is not going well. We're getting to the point of hand-to-hand combat, which is not great.
Yeah.
Edmund gets stabbed.
Oh yeah.
Yikes.
And you're like, well, that's what you get for only caring about candy.
Yeah, so that was not okay.
I wonder if that was supposed to be like a moral of the story.
I feel like that would be a really intense moral to add.
Like, you need to care about your family before candy,
candy, you idiot. I don't know. But of course, at your Deus Ex Machina, at the 11th hour, Aslan and the girls and all of the additional troops arrive. And Aslan totally mauls the Queen to death. It's fun.
He does. That's fun.
Yeah,
you don't actually see anything.
No. Again, children. It's a PG rated film.
It really is.
Even though you really do, you see like some like griffins get shot by arrows and stuff, and you almost saw Aslan get stabbed. Like, I know it's off camera, but it was really aggressive.
It's true.
Anyway, so obviously, like, they win, obviously. The Queen is killed. Her forces are pushed back. I don't know what happens to them.
They all kind of disappear in, like, a fast-forward-y version.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's really strange.
It's really strange. I can't figure out what that's supposed to mean. Yeah. But anyway... And of course, that's it. So summer is restored to Narnia, and then Peter and Susan and Edmund and Lucy become the kings and queens of Narnia. Yay. Basically, it's kind of fun because it's like a shared thing. Monarchy is usually a very singular situation, but this one's interesting because it's shared between siblings.
Also, like, what really made me laugh here is that they've crowned these 4 siblings as their kings and queens of Narnia, and
how are you going to repopulate?
Are between 8 and 13.
I know.
And how are you going to repopulate? They're all the only humans in the realm are the 4 children,
and they're related. So unless this is like a Flowers in the Attic situation, I don't really know how we're going to get more kids.
This is a children's book, Megan.
I don't think V.C. Andrews meant for Flowers in the Attic to be a children's book.
No, I don't think so.
Oh, it's fucked up. Anyway, so then we see, because apparently Aslan's one of these very ethereal characters who comes and goes when he's needed, basically.
Yeah, it's like, I thought he was supposed to rule the world. No, he doesn't.
He's a fucking lion. He's the king of the jungle. What does he do?
Yeah, he's like, this isn't a jungle. I gotta go over my jungle.
Yeah, so he dips. And then like probably roughly a decade or so, maybe
15 years.
15 years, thank you, goes by, and everything is good. Everything is happy.
They're all grown up and they should be having babies.
Which they can't. So that doesn't make any fucking sense. Like, Peter should have a kid at this point, and it's just not happened. And you're like, but how are we going to have more kings and queens, guys?
We won't.
Apparently not. Maybe we'll
They're immortal.
Can you vote? Is it like a democracy? You can just give it to someone else? Maybe.
I don't know. I think I read this book way back when, but I can't remember anything about it.
Yeah, I don't remember that part. I don't think they even bring it up, honestly. From what I remember from reading the book, I don't think that they bring it up at all. So, one day, 15 years later, the 4 of them are riding hiding in the forest.
Chasing a stag.
It's
and this made me laugh because if you notice, as they're prancing through the forest, chasing their stag, they're still all wearing their crowns. It's like, oh, is no one going to come and mug you for your crown?
And okay, I mean, granted, like whatever, if like peace has been restored to the realm or whatever, I guess that's fine. But my thing is more like, I'm like, really, even like the royals, they're not traveling with like a king's guard or something, like anyone with them at all. I love the little cute thing that Edmund still has the same horse that he had 15 years ago. Philip.
My name's Philip.
He's so, I know when he's like, whoa, horsey, when he's like a kid and he's trying to calm him down and the horse stops and he's like, my name's Philip, and he's like, oh, sorry.
It's so good.
It's really cute. Yeah. But they come back they're in the woods and they come back to the lantern, which was the lantern right next to the entryway to the wardrobe where Lucy originally went through when she first came to Narnia.
As I was watching this, my husband was like completely outraged because he's like, it's been 15 years. Like they didn't want to go back to like their home. What about their parents? What about their lives? And I'm like, I can't remember, but I feel like it's something along the lines of like the longer they stayed in Narnia, the more they forgot.
No, they did, because when they see the lamppost, they're like, I feel like I've been here before. Yeah. What is this?
Like, and they do.
Completely forgot they forget. Lives. And I think that there's probably some subliminal something or other in there because, of course, they're trying to, like, they were in the middle of this terrible thing at home with the Blitz, with World War II. In the early 1940s, things in Europe were not great at all. And so obviously this is like your ultimate escapism, although obviously there's also a lot of mirroring happening because there's a battle occurring where they wind up versus where they started as well.
But at least where they wind up, they can actually do something to help.
That's it. They have no power, and I think that part of what you see right at the beginning of the story is how determined Edmund is when the bombs are being dropped to take their father's photo, because he's obviously military, to take their father's photo out of the house, is that, their father is gone and they don't know if they'll ever see him again.
Right.
And so this gives them like a sense of purpose that they can have, because they're children. They couldn't have done much else, really.
And, I don't know if it's kind of a split between like the longer they stay in Narnia, the more they forget.
Yeah.
And also, like, maybe they think there's no point in going back home because, like, what is there to go back
What's left? We don't even know if our mom will be there anymore.
And it's like a fear, right? Like,
no, that's it. And as a kid, you would want to ignore the bad thing and just kind of hope that it goes away.
Stay in the magical realm where you get to be in charge and do whatever. You know?
No, exactly.
Yeah.
So when they see, the lamppost, they're like, oh, I feel like I've been here before. And then they wander off into the trees, which again eventually become coats, which eventually they fall right out of the wardrobe onto the floor.
The same age that they were when they went in.
And the professor is there and he's like, hey guys, what's up? And they haven't, I think they've only been gone like a number of days or something. Yeah. I don't think it's really even that long particularly. Hours, maybe a few hours or something. I don't know. It's not long. So he's like, they're like, wow, okay, so I guess we were meant to go and do that for the time that we did that. We helped, and now we're meant to come back home. So they decide to stay.
Yeah.
And then we get it's like the end of the film, like everybody's good, everybody's happy. It's the end of the film, and you do get like a little mid-credits thing where Lucy obviously has a little moment where she's like, I want to go back. I want to go see if I can get back. So she goes into the room to try and go into the wardrobe, and Professor Kirke is sitting on like the windowsill, and he's like, I don't think you're going to get back in that way. And he knows that because he's tried. And he's like, I've tried, because of course he went 50 years prior.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, he's like, it's the sort of openings for Narnia, like the portals to Narnia are available when they're needed most. They needed something.
When you least expected.
And when you least expected. So, they were needed there at that time, so they were able to go through, but it doesn't mean that it's always going to happen that way. And if I'm not mistaken, in Prince Caspian and everything, like they don't get through the same way. No. You don't go back through the wardrobe. It's not always the wardrobe.
I cannot, as we're talking about this, I cannot for the life of me remember anything about Prince Caspian aside from Ben Barnes.
Your eternal love for Ben Barnes.
Love Ben Barnes, but he was too young in that movie. Now he's not.
Well, now you can't watch it now and feel like, oh, so hot, because he was like way too young, and it makes you feel weird.
15 or 16 probably.
Now we can watch Shadow and Bone.
Oh God, he is fine.
And be like, oh, am I supposed to think he's the bad guy? Fuck it.
It's like, is he the villain?
Is he the villain?
Take me, Who cares? Who cares?
Who cares? It's fine.
High fantasy. It's great book series.
That's it. It's weird though, because I remember when I watched Prince Caspian when I was younger, I didn't even at that time, I wasn't really very fussed with him particularly. But then it's like weird because like I got older and he got older, obviously, and then he was in the first season of Westworld, and I was like, oh, okay, all right, never mind, I get it.
Yeah, he was in Westworld, but when he came in, like back in Shadow and Bone,
oh yeah,
I was like, oh my god, Prince Caspian, you grew up and I'm still in.
She was so happy about it. That's fine. Yeah. So hey, that's The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I mean, I think obviously, like, yes, it's pretty faithful, like good adaptation. There are some things that are a little bit silly and melodramatic. Some of the acting from the kids is questionable at times.
I mean, they are children,
but they were really young, so it's kind of normal. You know, it is what it is. It's kind of, it would be really difficult to like. Finding kids who are really able to carry a lot of stuff is so fucking hard to do because like you haven't experienced that much in your life to carry a particular range of emotions. So it's kind of normal. But they do
such a good job in this one because they're expected to act like children.
Yes, exactly. Part. Yeah, that's it. So I think it works really well. Obviously, the visuals are still good. Like everything really holds up. I will say, even though we're almost 20 years later.
Yeah,
it's pretty impressive.
Yeah,
pretty impressive. So anyway, how do you guys feel about like this as an adaptation of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe? Like, was it something that you really enjoyed, or were you like, this fell flat for me, whatever, I didn't really like it that much, you know, kind of thing? Would you have preferred like that fucking animated one from like the 80s, like the 70s or the 80s?
It was an old one.
It's old. It's old. Yeah, that one I remember I watched as a kid. Yeah. So for some people that'll be like the nostalgic one that they have. But you can let us know about that over on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads at FullyBookedCA. And you can also check out our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/book was way better. But until next week, guys, keep on reading.
Thanks, everyone.